Yes, sir. So if you had last week's sheet, then you have the current sheet because we never even got to that sheet last week. This is it's all right. So we're talking about ethics tonight, and we'll continue on as we've done before. We're in a new section which talks about protecting human authority, and we want to talk about that. We'll be talking about this for a long, long time. This is a lot of stuff because some of these are, especially you should not murder is going to be a big section. It's going to cover a lot of things, more than what we might even think. All right, and then obviously committed adultery. We're going to be talking about marriage, stealing. We're going to talk about a lot of things there too. All right, so jumping right back in again, as we think about the commandment, as we've established already last week, that this commandment is found throughout the New Testament, that we ought to honor our father and our mother, and we've established where that was found in the Old Testament, also where it's in the New Testament as well. Children should care for their aged parents as they are able. But I feel like that word able is a small word that holds a lot of power, right? What does it mean to be able to care for your parents? And what does that care look like? It could
look like moving into your home.
Okay.
Like into a convenient nursing home.
Okay, that's very good. Yes. Okay, good. So you listed off a couple. It could mean that those aged parents move into your home, right? Would that be caring for those people? Yeah, that would be caring for them as you're able, right? Maybe you say, well, I'm not able because my home doesn't even have the room to have that person in there. Okay, well, that's a concern that you might have. What about as you're able? Maybe it is you put them into a facility that can take care of them. All right, as you're able. Is that place free? No, it's going to cost money, right? So how are you going to handle that? All right. So those are some things we think about when we use that word able. How are we doing these? Well, it might depend on various things. Now, going through this study with you all, we're seeing there's a lot of, I don't like to use the word gray area, but there's a lot of wisdom that needs to be used in how we follow this commandment. And so here's a question we might think about early on in our study. Why do you think modern society increasingly views elderly parents as a burden rather than a responsibility? Maybe there's even a third. There's a third one I didn't put in there. Why do you think modern society increasingly views elderly parents as a burden, a responsibility, or a blessing? Right? Because what do elderly parents bring as a blessing? Before we talk about a responsibility or a burden, what do elderly parents bring as a form of a blessing, scripturally speaking? Wisdom. That's right. Wisdom. Did somebody else say something other than wisdom? Okay, yeah. Yeah, they bring wisdom to the table. They bring experience, which again is that an idea of wisdom. So wisdom, they bring experience there. They can sometimes be a helping hand in some ways. So what about why does society see them oftentimes as just a burden? I think this plays into that idea of them being a blessing.
Because they think it's inconvenient.
What's that?
It inconveniences them. They don't get to do what they want.
That's right.
They have to sometimes do what needs to be done.
That's right. Okay. They don't get to only do what they want to do, right? So we talked about that in our lesson tonight, right? So having man and self, people are increasingly more and more self-centered. In our culture, in this world, people are more and more self-centered. And does it take time and effort and energy to take care of somebody else other than yourself? Sure it does, right? Why are we ready and willing to take care of our own children, but not ready and willing to take care of those people that bore us? Right? Because those people are part of our family, and the people that are older are part of our family. We're ready and willing to take care of them, and we see them as a responsibility. But why do we not see people that are older than us as a responsibility? Because I think some parents would see their young children and say they're just a burden. That's true. But I think by and large, most parents would say my children are a blessing and they are my responsibility. But why do we not think that same way when we look up the ladder toward our parents, as they are a blessing and they are in some ways my responsibility? Okay?
One primary one might be that we didn't really choose for them to get old. I know that sounds weird, but generally you choose to have children.
Okay, that's good. That's a great one. Yes, because you're saying it's not necessarily apples to apples, Freddie. You know, we choose to have children. You know, we don't choose to have who our parents are. I think that's a good point. Yeah, right. We didn't choose for them to get old, right? We said, knowing going in to have kids, I know these kids are going to be in my house and I'm going to have to raise them and nurture them and all this, but my parents, that's not part of this contract deal. So that's a good point. Yes, yes.
Diapering an adult is a lot different than diapering.
Okay, yes, that's right. So it's much different, right? So diapering an adult is much different than diapering a baby, right? So it's not the same. Yeah, taking care of them is. I mean, it's sad you'll see some of these nursing home people that are beaten and bruised. Well, part of that, no, I'm not giving any justification, but part of that is because these old people are fighting back, right? They're fighting back inside of a nursing home, right? And so they're beaten and bruised because some of these workers have a short temper and get upset with them, okay? A child, at their worst, when they're little, you kind of just, put them in a headlock, and then you're okay. All right, yes, Steve?
A little bit off track. 3 times in Scripture it says, man shall leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife. So children and offspring of the wife. So by connection, they're closer to the kids.
Yes, right, yeah. There is actually, and there's the children are a production of, of the two people coming together, the husband and wife coming together, but there's your sets of parents and my sets of parents, right? Those things are not ever really melded together. Those are 2 separate families, okay? So that's another hardship again, right? I'm not saying that it has to be an easy answer. I think it's just something that we ought to think about, right? Because society does see, by and large, they see, it's nice to see when you have the children doing their due diligence and responsibility toward their parents. That's a good thing. Yes, Brother Clint?
A couple of things. One is a mindset shift. Right? Usually the older generation takes care of the younger generation, but when your parents get older, you have to shift that.
That's a good point, yeah.
The younger generation actually has to care for the older. And in our culture, that responsibility has been largely offloaded to the government.
Yes. Oh, man, what a great point. Yes, so 2 points that Clint makes. The first one is, we are in a mindset of constantly taking care of those people that are younger than us. It's almost a natural, you see somebody little and we want to take care of little people. But as we grow older, we are becoming the older people in society, and people that are older than us are becoming really old, and they need somebody to take care of them, right? They can't do all the things they used to do. It's kind of like a bell curve, right? You need all this help here, and you become very self-sustaining here in the middle, and then guess what? You kind of go right back, like you said, diapers to diapers, right? Not being able to walk to not being able to walk, right? All over again, some of the same things you see here, and it takes a very intentional mind shift for us to go from this to this. But then also, when the government is regularly doing all these things for a society that people should be doing for their own families, people start to tend to they just rely upon an institution, let's just say an institution to do those things, and they step away completely. And we've seen that with families. There are people that are in nursing homes and people never come see them. They're there all alone. They're never taken care of by anybody other than someone. Again, they're Medicare is taking care of the bill, and so families say, they're all taken care of, I'm not going to do anything for them. Well, that's terrible, right? Okay, yes, Brother Sai?
Along with that, it's interesting, I think our culture has also just developed a less emphasis on respect for older people.
Yeah.
As a general rule of thumb.
Sure.
I think another thing we could add to this is responsibility definitely, but also privilege. I mean, what a blessing it is to be able to serve parents and other figures who have raised us and did all these things for us. Now we have the privilege and responsibility to serve them and pay it forward.
Do we see that mindset of it's a privilege, right? That it's an honor to do that. And again, going back to your comment also, I mentioned this last week, we live in we don't live in a shame honor society. And so a shame honor society would say, it is a great privilege. This is a great honor that I get to take care of my ancestors who it could be not just mother and father, but others. I have great respect and I have great honor for them, because if I don't, I realize that my society will see me in a shameful way, and I don't want that. Yes, Brother Clint?
One more quick thing. Because of our level of affluence, we sometimes think, what dumb decisions did my parents make so they're now in a position when they're 75 where they need my help? Because there are so many different ways to make good financial decisions along the way where they don't actually need your financial help when they're 75.
Yeah. So you're saying anybody who is at 75 and needs financial assistance from their family has made bad decisions?
No, I'm saying the kids could say, could think of themselves, I really don't want to care for them because they made this dumb decision, this
Sure.
dumb decision, this dumb decision,
Yeah.
this dumb decision.
Yeah, good. Yes. Yes, Amy?
Well, I was just going to say, I think this is devil's advocate of me here, but it is hard to take care of older people,
Yes.
especially people that are bedridden.
Yes.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
I was a nurse.
Sure.
And I changed food. It is very demanding. It's hard.
Yeah.
And some people can't.
Well,
Some people
to,
physically
to,
cannot do that.
to go along with your point,
Yes.
what do we now experience? Again, this is not negating God's word, but what do we experience as a people and as a culture that they didn't experience with regard to old people? People living nearly as long by and large, right? You're having a swath of people that live long, long lives, right? Again, he talks about, if you live 70 or 80 years, right? Well, we're seeing a huge increase of people that are living really long lives. Again, and it is a hard thing to do when a lot of your family is living a lot longer than they would have before.
I think we should take care of our
Sure, I know, I'm with you too. Sure, I think so.
I do think that it's work.
It's a lot of work, that's right.
It depends on the person. I mean, some people, my grandmother drives, she's 86, it's
Yeah.
very
That's right, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting.
different scenario for a different person.
Yes, Beth?
Also, when you talk about the difference in your kids and the one you take care of,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have kids, but
Sure.
what I see is that you are the adult in that situation and you are controlling
Yeah,
technically
absolutely.
how you raise those kids.
Yes,
When you're taking care of older people, they have an opinion.
That's right.
Because they go, I've been doing this for 80 years and you've been doing it for whatever.
that's such a good
You
point.
know?
Yeah, that's
So you-
insight from somebody who knows, right? Somebody who knows.
Don't get me wrong, my daddy is easier than most.
That's right, yeah,
To be honest,
absolutely.
but,
Yes.
It is very different. Because
Yeah.
They do have an opinion and he does listen to me sometimes. Like,
Yes.
I'm praying this week for no rain at camp, but rain in Franklin so he won't mow while I'm there. I'm weighing that, but
Yeah.
it's like you have to,
Sure.
he does have an opinion too.
I think that's great. I think we've had some good thoughts about this. There's definitely a difference between what you do here and being able to control their actions and limitations, where here it's not as much. They're free will agents that want to do and have been doing things for a long time. But I think we're going to get to this in a little bit. I think part of this, though, is not pendulum swinging to either way. So we're not saying, well, I'm not going to take care of my family at all because they're not going to allow me to help them in the way that I think would be best. And it's also not, I'm going to lock them in a cage, right? It has to be a balance in between that says, listen, they're a mature adult, but I'm also going to set boundaries for myself, saying, hey, mom or dad, I'm honoring you and I want to care for you, but if you don't allow me to do it this way, you're going to have to figure out a way to do it for yourself, right? Yes, Amy?
Well, another thing is, you're talking about respecting them. We believe life begins at conception
Uh-huh.
until you die.
That's right.
So they're human. They're alive.
That's right.
It may be hard, but you still
They deserve it.
dignity. We should respect them.
That's right, yes.
Not just something you shove away.
I'm going to get to that exact point. Turn in your Bibles to 1 Timothy chapter 5. Now, again, we're talking about, this is kind of talking about dignity as well. I mean, we're just touched on that, so I wanted to make sure we talk about this as well. 1 Timothy chapter 5. It's an interesting passage. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 9, beginning says, verse 8, so it really sets the tone. But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, right? And I believe this means younger and older, right? So if there's people that are in your household, you want to take care of the people that are in your household. He's denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Verse 9 says, a widow is to be put on the list only if she is not less than 60 years old, having been a wife of one man, having a reputation for good works, and if she has brought up children, if she has shown hospitality to strangers, if she has washed the saints' feet, if she's assisted those in distress, and if she has devoted herself to every good work. All right? So, verse 11 says, but refuse to put the younger widows on the list, for when they feel sensual desires in disregard of Christ, they may want to get married, and thus incurring condemnation because they have set aside their privilege, their previous pledge. All right, so there's a lot to unpack here. Again, these, just as it pertains to those people that are older, I guess, does the church have some responsibility to support these widows? As far as the text goes? Sure it does, right? There's some responsibility, yes, in part, but who is the first line of defense for these people? The family, that's right, yes. Not the government, right? Not some other institution. The first line for these people, these widows, is the family. The family is supposed to be the one. So, you know, and the parameters, they're very specific about who's to be taken care of. What kind of woman is to be, again, because a widow, it's not widowers, what kind of widow is to be taken care of? Over 60, so we have an age requirement, which is pretty wild, right? An age requirement, okay? That's right. Okay, that's right. Right. So, over 60. That's right. She was the example. Okay, so over 60, but then notice what it says about this woman, right? I mean, look at that list. That list is not somebody who has just been skating along to skate on, right? They have been hard at work for a long, long time, right? So, chapter 5, verses 3 and 4 say, honor widows who are widows indeed. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, notice that, not even just children, but grandchildren, they must first learn to practice piety in regard to their own family and to make some return, make some return to their parents, for this is acceptable in the sight of God. So Paul is telling Timothy, listen, just because a widow is a widow doesn't mean the church automatically just puts it on the rolls. For one, their family needs to be playing a part in their life. Now, you say, well, what if their family doesn't want to take care of them? Which could be the case. What if a widow comes to the knowledge of the truth and becomes a Christian, the rest of her family is not? Maybe they're pagan or maybe they're Jewish. They may not want to take care of her. That's a very good and acceptable person that would be a candidate for, if there's nobody taking care of her, and the church is not just going to let her starve to death on the streets. All right, that would be a good candidate. But if you have family, those families should be taking care of you. If we're Christians, we should be those people that are also helping out with our family as well. And again, verse 8, says, if anyone does not provide for his own, right? So own is in your own family, your family, your children, but also your parents. And that also might mean your grandparents, because he says parents or children and grandchildren should be helping out in this process. So the adult children share the brunt of the responsibility. They share the brunt of the responsibility. Now, something a little bit different back in that day than happens a lot today, our child birth rate or child per family is quite low. And so you would have big families. Is it easier to share the brunt of a load over a lot of people than over just a few? Absolutely, right? And so that's also another area that we're not thinking about that makes it a lot harder for small families to take care of their elderly parents. If you have an old father and old mother and your parents only had 2 children or a single child, it's going to make it pretty difficult because all that responsibility, or one child, it all falls on your shoulders, doesn't it, right? But if your parents had a load of kids, right, 10 kids, then that load can be shared among many people, right? All right, so that's something to think about if you're thinking about having kids, have a lot, and they can take care of you when you're old. Okay, yes?
But there's I'll just say, the Amish and the Mennonites, they are raised that way.
Yeah, that's right.
They build onto their house with their parents in.
Yes.
They think that way all the time.
Sure.
Now, they don't think like the rest of the world and a lot of things, and I'm not saying they're
sure.
right. But
That's right, yeah.
They're different about
It's a
that.
culture, it's a mindset.
Because in Hawaiian
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because they build their homes in a multi-generational levels. They do that on purpose.
That's right.
Because they take care of their family.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, so that's something else also to think about that we haven't really considered, especially with our culture, is that we have families that are so small and so efficient that when parents do get older, there becomes a lot more of a burden on the children that remain when those parents are old. All right. So if we go back a little while to our discussion on work, right? How does this discussion relate to human dignity? Who is just talking about this? Amy, were you talking about this, right? How does this discussion relate to human dignity? You kind of said it already.
Well, like I think our culture, if it's not convenient, it's not life.
Okay, good. If it's not convenient, it's not life. That's a good way to say it. Yeah, in our culture, if it's not convenient, it's not life. Okay, and it's not worth preserving, right? Because it's going to be hard. Okay.
The opposite of what the Bible teaches.
That's right. Yes.
Life is valuable.
Every life is valuable. And yeah, so I think this is, we'll talk a little bit more about this, right? We talk about, we'll talk later about, topics like euthanasia, right? On the other end of the spectrum of abortion, but also euthanasia. All life is precious in the eyes of God, right? And so we don't get rid of little people in the womb because they're inconvenient, and we don't get rid of and shove older people into a dark corner because they're inconvenient too, right? They're still life. Yes, Si?
One thing too, for the last question, but also this as well, is in Acts 6, when they choose, the apostles are like, hey, there's these the church is saying there's these widows that aren't being taken care of. And the apostles are like, well, hey, we need to appoint some men to take care of them. It's not just like, well, let's just have this one guy. He appoints 7 men.
Yeah.
To specifically minister to these people. And I think that really shows the church should care immensely about the widows.
Sure.
To the point where we might be devoting a lot of resources specifically just for them.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and making sure that, as we're growing older, right, that we're thinking about what that life might look like as a widow. Right? And so we're not doing the good works because we want to be taken care of by the church, but realize that the qualification to be taken care of by the church is that you are one who is working constantly. Right? So keep that in mind, right? If you're saying, hey, listen, as I grow older, that's part of the qualification of me being taken care of. Clint?
Yeah, I think the implicit assumption, given that list of qualifications, is that to the extent that the widow could continue to do these things, she is continuing to do these things.
Yes, that's right.
Now she's streaming Netflix, is taking a check from the church.
That's right. I agree. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Sunshine?
You weren't here yet, but 2 years ago, my neighbor, her husband died from a heart attack, fell over. And at that time, she was 48. And for the first year, she was literally my next door neighbor. We were neighbors and friends for 11 years when this happened. And I remember one time I was hanging out with her one night, and she's like, I'm just so grateful that you're mom. She was saying all these sweet things, and I was like, well, in all honesty, Allison, even if we weren't that close, as a Christian, it's my responsibility. It's a service to you that I should do for you.
Sure.
So.
And I think that you're hitting a good point. Like, what does the world see? And all of this, let's think about how does the world view us as we neglect let's just say the opposite, the negative side, if we neglect our parents, right? They say, wow, those Christians, they want to gain converts, but they don't even want to take care of their own family, right? So I think your example is great. Hey, as a Christian, I want to take care of you. And that should flow naturally into our own families, as Paul says here in 1 Timothy, right? It should flow in that area too, that we want to take care of our families because we realize not only that it's a good thing to do, but realize that other people are watching us as we either take care of them or don't, right? As we neglect them in the process. So, and we mentioned this last week too in Mark chapter 7, giving money to some religious organization does not excuse one from the obligation to care for one's parents, right? So you say, well, listen, maybe we even cross out religious organization. Maybe giving money to some organization does not excuse one from the obligation to care for one's parents, right? You say, hey, listen, I pay the nursing home. I pay the money there, so they should be good to go, right? if you're thinking religiously, hey, I give my money to the church and they just got to figure that out, right? Some people will say, well, listen, I pay my taxes so that my mom or my dad can be taken care of in a nursing home, so therefore I don't have to take care of them myself. Well, yeah, we all pay taxes, and if they're using that kind of system, then you should still be there to help them along the way. You can't write them off because you're paying money towards some system or organization.
Christ took care of his mother from the cross.
Wow.
He told John
Good.
to go home.
That's nowhere at all in my notes, but yeah, Christ took care of his mother from the cross. Listen, hey, take care of my mother. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Yes, but Steve?
Yeah, I think there's some fundamental principles here. But, I mean, for me, as I have studied this in the past, there's culture and there's context here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Paul says what he means and he means what he says, so I don't have any issue with that. But, having been the wife of one man, okay, we can discuss that.
Mm-hmm.
So, should she not be served if her husband abandoned her, or
Yeah.
she had a reason to be
Sure.
married?
Yeah.
Does that exclude her?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
And to finish the thought,
Yeah.
and I'll turn it back over to you. In the context, there were a lot of children that were abandoned just because her own, she could have raised the children of others that were abandoned, and I think it would still fit within the teaching of this scripture here. So would you exclude a lady that's 70 years old that never had a child of her own, but she helped raise, those kids were abandoned all the time?
Yeah. Well, I guess that second part, I guess I'd ask, those kids that she raised that became like her own, are you going to step up and help this woman that helped you? Right. That's the first thing I'd say. And then also, I'd say, kind of what Clint was talking about, I would make sure that we, I hate to use the word case-by-case basis, but you see that someone who is doing good and living a faithful life. This is the point. One point I want to make. I was somewhere else where not just a person, but a family was getting a monthly check from the church. And they had all the ability to work and provide for themselves. And finally, one day, the men said, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this, right? We're giving together here and then giving to this family that's not doing anything. And those funds got cut off from that family, and they immediately figured out to do what they needed to do to take care of themselves. So I guess part of what I'm saying is that we make sure that we don't want to be people that are enabling people to do nothing, right? Again, that's back to what Clint had said, streaming Netflix at home, right? We want to make sure that these people are being taken care of because they have no other outlet to be taken care of. I think that's kind of what, like you said, context-wise and culturally, I think that's kind of the point, right? The woman at over 60 years old wouldn't have the ability to get a job to do the things she needed to do to be able to support herself if her husband had died and she had always relied upon his income. Yes?
I feel like that, from my point of view, things are different than they were when I was a kid.
Okay.
Because people that, grandparents just came into the house.
Mm-hmm.
If they got elderly, they just moved in with you, and moved in with them. And that was what was expected.
Yep.
The church was important, but it was a family thing.
That's right.
We'll take care of you. And now we have been raised so that I'm going to take care of myself.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to have to depend on it.
And I think that is that shift away from the honor-shame culture. There was more honor and shame, and we talk about this, we see pictures and they talk about, I miss the days when you could go to Walmart and not see somebody in their pajama pants, right? Because you say, well, why is it like that today? Well, because in an honor-shame culture, someone would go up to you and say, you're dressed inappropriately. That's shameful, right? That doesn't happen today, right? And the same would follow through with your mom or your dad is in a nursing home and you're not taking care of them. That's shameful, right? So that culture has shifted a lot to more individualistic, for better or for worse. And I think,
But as
Yeah.
we're prepared for that.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yes. Okay. You're preparing for.
Look, Allie, here I come.
Yeah. No. You're like, hey, I'm already prepared to take care of myself at this point. Yes. Okay. Right. So then that makes me wonder about how much a parent would feel dishonored by their children and not taking care of them if a lot of the culture feels that they would be that they're already expecting to take care of themselves when they're older anyway. Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, we had a lot of discussion. That was awesome. That was very good. We got through, I think, a slide and a half or something. So save your sheets because they're basically brand new for the next time we're together. Okay. Well, thanks so much for your attendance tonight. Thank you.